My manager claimed my work, took credit, and won an award. He thanked everyone except me during his speech. Can you imagine spending 8 months of your life pouring every ounce of your soul into a project, only for your boss to steal all the credit, win a prestigious industry award, and then, on stage, thank everyone but you? That's exactly what happened to me, and that moment, that burning injustice, lit a fire inside me that changed everything. I'd spent 5 years at that consulting firm, clawing my way up from a junior analyst to senior project lead. It wasn't just about the hours, though there were plenty of those. It was about the relentless drive to do things right. I stayed late fixing problems, came in early to prep, answered emails on weekends because clients don't stop needing things just because it's Saturday. I was good, truly good at my job. And my boss, Victor, he noticed that dedication. He noticed it, and he used it against me. Victor had been with the company for 15 years, a master of corporate theater. He understood that looking successful mattered infinitely more than actually being successful. While his team did the grueling, actual work, he floated from executive meetings to happy hours, golf outings to networking events. He'd present our findings as his insights, our strategies as his vision. He built his entire reputation, his entire empire, on the backs of people like me who were too focused on doing the work to realize we were being robbed blind. Then came the project that changed everything. A monstrous overhaul of operations for one of our biggest clients. They were bleeding money, desperate for a fix. Victor, with a smile that could charm a snake, volunteered our team, then immediately handed the entire thing to me. He said I was ready for more responsibility. He said it would be great for my career development. He said he believed in me and would support me every step of the way. What he meant was, he wanted the glory without lifting a finger. 8 months of my life vanished into that project. I analyzed their entire operation, identified 17 different areas of waste, developed a comprehensive plan, and trained their staff on entirely new systems. 60-hour weeks weren't the exception. They were the norm. Meanwhile, Victor? He was at conferences, long lunches, checking in occasionally to ask for updates he could simply parrot upwards. He contributed absolutely nothing of substance. The results, though, were spectacular. The client saved over $2 million in the first year alone. They were so impressed, they signed an extended contract worth significantly more. Our firm's leadership noticed. The project was nominated for the Innovation Award, the highest honor given to a single team. Victor accepted the nomination on behalf of the team, of course. He attended the selection committee meeting alone. He presented our work as if he had been personally involved in every single detail. I remember the night of the awards ceremony so vividly. Victor walked onto that stage with a grin that made my stomach churn, a smile of pure, unadulterated triumph. I sat there, frozen at my table, expecting something. A mention. A shared moment. I had done everything. Every analysis, every recommendation, every implementation, every client meeting. But he held that award and he gave his speech. He thanked the leadership team for their guidance. He thanked the client for their partnership. He thanked his wife for supporting his demanding schedule. He thanked his assistant for keeping him organized. He even thanked the catering staff for the lovely dinner. But my name? Not a whisper. Not a single, solitary word. Afterward, colleagues flocked to Victor, congratulating him, while I stood alone by the bar. A few people gave me sympathetic glances. They knew the truth. But most didn't, or didn't care. Victor was the one holding the trophy. At one point, he actually walked past me, caught my eye, and winked. Like we shared some glorious secret, like I was supposed to be grateful for the opportunity to make him look good. That night, everything shifted. The fire was lit, burning cold and clear. I wasn't going to rage, not out loud anyway. My revenge would be quiet, surgical. I started planning my exit. I updated my resume, meticulously detailing every single thing I had accomplished on that project. I reached out to contacts, had coffee with recruiters. Within 3 months, I had it, an offer from a competitor, a better title, and a hefty raise. I handed in my 2 weeks' notice. Victor seemed surprised, but not concerned. He wished me well, said he understood that people needed to grow. He had no idea the earthquake I'd just set in motion. What Victor didn't grasp was that I was the system. Every custom solution, every bespoke integration, every complex workflow, I designed them all from scratch, tailored specifically to that client's needs. I had basic documentation, sure, but the deeper institutional knowledge, the why behind every what, it was all in my head. And when I left, that knowledge walked out the door with me. 3 weeks later, the phone calls started. Little questions at first, then bigger ones. The client's inventory tracking system was throwing error codes. Victor couldn't answer them. He tried to assign other team members, but they didn't understand what I had built. He sent Celeste, a smart but inexperienced consultant, to fix it. She'd only been with the firm for 8 months, never visited the client site. She looked at my basic documentation, but it only covered the surface. I documented what the system did, but not how all the pieces connected, especially the custom integrations. Celeste called the software vendor. They told her they didn't build this system. They couldn't support custom modifications. She needed the designer. Celeste went back to Victor, distraught. She couldn't fix it. Victor told her to keep trying. Nolan Edwards, our main client contact, sent Victor an email. Polite but firm. Simple questions were taking days to answer. When I was there, he got responses within hours. He was paying premium rates for support that wasn't showing up. The message was crystal clear. Service quality had plummeted. Victor's LinkedIn message popped up around lunchtime that Thursday. Casual, friendly. How are you settling in? Enjoying the change? Love to catch up sometime. I just stared at it, took a screenshot, saved it to a folder, and didn't reply. I had no obligation to help Victor or the firm. They made their choice when they gave him that award. I closed LinkedIn and went back to work. My new office was smaller than my old one, but the window overlooked the city instead of a parking lot. It felt good. Really good. Meanwhile, the problems at Victor's firm kept piling up. 2 weeks after I left, the client tried to process their monthly vendor payments. The procurement system I designed handled all their vendor relationships. Something went wrong. $500,000 in payments got stuck. Automated approvals weren't triggering. Vendors were screaming. The client was in a panic. Victor sent Celeste again. She spent 4 hours trying to trace the logic of the approval workflows. I had built them to account for their complex payment terms. Celeste couldn't trace it. She called Victor at 7 p.m., desperate. An emergency meeting was called for Monday morning with Nolan, Victor, and 2 senior partners from the firm. I heard about it from a former colleague. Nolan laid it bare. The support level had dropped significantly since I left. They needed someone who understood the systems. They were paying for expertise they weren't receiving. Victor stammered something about a transition period. Owen Grimes, one of the senior partners, cut him off. Why is this transition so difficult, Victor? Victor mumbled that the systems were more complex than initially realized. Nolan shot back, "That's not my problem to solve." After the meeting, Owen pulled Victor aside. How involved was she really, he asked. Victor finally admitted I was more involved than he initially indicated. Owen went back to his office and pulled my personnel file. He found all my detailed project documentation, my weekly status reports, my meeting notes. He compared it to the materials Victor had submitted for the award. The stories didn't match. Not even close. Victor's nomination made it sound like he led the implementation. My documentation showed I did almost everything while Victor attended conferences. Owen scheduled a meeting with HR. Catherine Haynes from HR sent me an official email. Formal, professional. The firm was reviewing the client situation and wondered if I'd be willing to consult as a contractor. A generous hourly rate. I read it 3 times. Typed out a polite response. I appreciated the offer, but my commitment to my new employer prevented me from taking outside consulting work. And also, hell no, I'm not fixing his mess. The client CEO got involved. He called the senior partners directly. They were evaluating whether to continue the relationship. The payment processing failure was unacceptable. They needed reliable support, or they'd find it elsewhere. Owen looked at the numbers. That account represented 8% of the firm's annual revenue. Losing it would mean layoffs. reduced bonuses, a significant hit to their industry reputation. Owen called another meeting. This time, Catherine from HR was there too. Victor sat in that conference room, trying to explain how the project worked, but he couldn't actually explain anything. He talked about high-level strategy and vision while they asked specific technical questions he had no answers for. Catherine took notes, comparing his vague statements to my meticulous documentation. The gaps were obvious, glaring. Owen asked Victor directly, why couldn't someone with his supposed expertise answer basic questions about systems he claimed to have designed? Victor said the details were handled by team members. Owen pressed him. Which team members, specifically? For the first time in months, Victor said my name. Then, Owen pulled out my weekly status reports and read them aloud. Every single one showed me doing the analysis, building the systems, training the staff, solving the problems. Victor's name appeared occasionally, in sentences like briefed Victor on progress, or Victor attended client dinner. Catherine, quiet but observant, asked Victor if he felt the award nomination accurately represented his contribution level. Victor mumbled something about awards recognizing leadership, not just individual tasks. Owen shot back, the award specifically honored innovation and implementation excellence. Did you personally innovate or implement anything on this project, Victor? He couldn't answer that question honestly, without admitting he did almost nothing. The very next day, Nolan Edwards called me. Not Victor.
Me.
He asked if I'd be willing to meet with him and his CEO to discuss their consulting needs. He said they were evaluating their options and wanted to hear my perspective. I checked with Lyle Schmidt, my new boss, and he was thrilled. This is exactly the kind of opportunity we hoped for, he said, and told me to set up the meeting. I scheduled it for the following week. Brooklyn Meadows, a brilliant senior consultant at my new firm, helped me prepare. Our presentation focused on sustainable improvement and knowledge transfer, not ongoing dependency. She said my approach was different from most consultants who tried to make themselves irreplaceable. I'd rather teach people to solve their own problems than keep them paying me forever, I told her. She just smiled. That's exactly why clients will want to work with you. The presentation went even better than expected. Nolan's CEO was there, along with their CFO and head of operations. I walked them through my philosophy, specific examples, and improvements I could implement. The CEO asked pointed questions about why service quality had dropped so much after I left my old firm. I kept my answer focused on my approach, never directly criticizing Victor. I explained my belief in thorough documentation and empowering clients to maintain systems independently. Some consultants prefer to keep institutional knowledge locked up to ensure ongoing business, I said. I prefer building genuine partnerships where clients feel empowered. The CEO nodded. That aligns with what we're looking for. 2 days later, Nolan called to tell me they were awarding the contract to my new firm. He was professional but couldn't resist adding, "We value working with consultants who actually do the work, rather than just taking credit for it." I thanked him, looking forward to working together again. Lyle Schmidt was absolutely thrilled. "This account puts you on track for promotion to principal consultant within a year," he exclaimed. He also immediately increased my compensation as recognition for bringing in such a major new client. The raise was significant enough that I could finally stop worrying about money and focus entirely on doing good, meaningful work. Victor's firm officially lost the account the following week. Owen Grimes launched a formal review of Victor's entire project portfolio. They pulled files on every major project Victor claimed credit for over the past 5 years. They contacted former team members. What they found was a sickening pattern, Victor claiming primary responsibility for work done largely by others who had since left the firm. 3 other consultants who'd worked under Victor had stories eerily similar to mine. One had left the firm specifically because of credit issues years ago, but nothing had come of it. Owen realized the firm had a systemic problem they had ignored for far too long. Catherine Haynes contacted me again as part of this investigation, asking for documentation of my work. I gathered everything: weekly status reports, meeting notes, training materials, email threads where I answered technical questions while Victor was copied, but never contributed. I sent it all to Catherine without adding commentary or complaints. The evidence spoke for itself. She thanked me, saying the review was helping them understand what went wrong. Then, the industry association that gave Victor the award received an anonymous complaint about the nomination materials being misleading. I didn't send it, and to this day, I don't know who did. But they opened their own review, contacting my old firm for supporting documentation about Victor's role. Owen had to provide the same evidence Catherine collected. The discrepancies between Victor's nomination materials and the actual project documentation were impossible to ignore. They sent Victor a letter saying they were reviewing the award. I focused on delivering excellent work for my new client, ignoring the drama at my old firm. 3 weeks implementing improvements, training their staff, documenting everything thoroughly. Nolan Edwards told Lyle Schmidt, "She's exactly what we needed. Our previous consultants made us feel dependent. She makes us feel capable." 4 months after I left, Victor was quietly demoted from his leadership position and moved to an individual contributor role. No public announcement, but word spreads fast. People from my old firm reached out. Victor lost his team, his fancy office, his inflated title. He was assigned to work under other people's supervision. His salary stayed the same, but his bonus structure changed drastically. The firm couldn't fire him without risking a lawsuit, but they made it clear his leadership days were over. Several people told me he looked miserable every time they saw him. Owen Grimes called me personally. He apologized, truly apologized, for the firm's failure to recognize my contributions. He said the investigation revealed serious problems with how they evaluated and rewarded consultants. They were implementing new policies to ensure proper attribution going forward. He even asked if I'd consider returning in a senior leadership role, with full credit for my previous work and a significant compensation package. I appreciated the apology, but politely declined. I was happy at my new firm, excited about my opportunities. I told him I hoped the changes would help others avoid what I went through. He understood. The letter from the industry association arrived at Victor's office 2 weeks after Owen apologized to me. They reviewed their process. They compared Victor's nomination materials to the actual documentation. Victor claimed he led the analysis and developed the strategy. The records showed I did those things while he attended conferences. The association sent him a formal letter. They were taking back the award. His name was removed from their website. The trophy he proudly displayed in his office had to be returned. The whole thing became public record, available for anyone in the industry to find. Victor sent me an email 3 days after losing the award. Carefully written, almost like a lawyer helped him draft it. He regretted any misunderstanding, acknowledged my significant role in the client's success. He hoped we could move forward professionally and wished me well. It felt hollow, honestly. More about protecting himself than offering a genuine apology. But I saved it, just in case. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Nolan called me the following week with an invitation that caught me completely off guard. His company was holding their annual leadership conference, and they wanted me to speak about the operational improvements we implemented together. "The executive team is so impressed," he said. "They think other leaders could learn from our approach." I told him I'd never done public speaking at that level. He said that's exactly why they wanted me. I could explain complex ideas in ways that made sense to people actually doing the work. I agreed, though I felt a knot of nerves forming. Brooklyn offered to help me prepare. We spent hours going through my draft, refining points, practicing delivery. "You know this material better than anyone in that room will," she reminded me. "Trust yourself." Her confidence made the whole thing feel less scary. The presentation happened on a Tuesday morning in a hotel ballroom filled with about 300 people. My heart hammered, but I focused on the content. I talked about identifying waste, training staff, building internal capability. I showed specific examples of improvements and money saved. The audience asked smart questions, engaged. Nolan told me afterward I did better than most professional speakers they hired. 2 executives from other companies approached me, asking to discuss similar challenges. Lyle heard about the referrals before I even got back to the office. "You're becoming valuable," he said, "not just for your technical skills, but for bringing in new business." Catherine sent me a final email. My cooperation with the investigation had revealed serious problems. They were implementing new policies, Detailed documentation, verification from multiple team members for award nominations, questions about attribution and performance reviews. It felt like closure. Knowing that something good came from that painful situation, that it might prevent others from going through what I did, meant a lot. 6 months after I left my old firm, Lyle called me into his office. He closed the door. "The partners voted unanimously," he announced, a huge smile on his face, "to promote you to principal consultant. It came with a significant raise and equity in the company. You earned it faster than anyone in the firm's history," he said, "because you brought in major clients and delivered exceptional results." I was now part owner. I couldn't quite process how much my situation had changed in half a year. I'd gone from being invisible at award ceremonies to becoming a partner in a respected firm. Victor reached out one more time the following month. "Could we meet for coffee?" he asked. To clear the air. I stared at the message. Maybe he genuinely wanted to apologize. Maybe he just wanted absolution. Either way, I couldn't see how it would benefit me. I'd moved on. I sent a polite response, declining the invitation. Some conversations just aren't worth having. Nolan became one of my strongest professional supporters. He recommended my services to colleagues at other companies. 2 of those referrals turned into signed contracts within a month. Both clients specifically mentioned Nolan told them I focused on making their teams capable, not dependent. That reputation, built on trust and actual results, felt more valuable than any trophy. An editor from an industry publication contacted me. They wanted me to write an article on sustainable client relationships, on knowledge transfer instead of dependency. This was it. My chance to present a counter-narrative to Victor's approach, without ever mentioning his name. I spent 2 weeks writing. The piece explained how teaching clients to solve their own problems created stronger, not weaker, relationships. Brooklyn helped me refine it. "You've taught me more about consulting excellence than any training program," she said. "You showed me that integrity and success aren't opposite goals." Her comment made me realize that being a good example mattered more than winning awards. News about my old firm losing more clients traveled fast. I ran into someone from a different consulting company who mentioned Victor's team was falling apart. They had a reputation problem now because former employees were finally talking about credit issues and poor management. Victor's pattern wasn't just my experience anymore. Others were speaking up. The firm's leadership must have realized they had a serious problem. Their recruiting efforts became aggressive, offering higher salaries. But good consultants talk to each other. Lyle pulled me aside one afternoon. "Interested in mentoring some junior consultants?" he asked. "Your approach to client work and professional integrity sets the right example." I agreed immediately. My first session, I talked about technical skills, but also the importance of documenting contributions, making your work visible, and knowing when it was time to leave an environment that didn't value you. One consultant asked how to handle managers taking credit for teamwork. I told her to keep detailed records, build direct client relationships, and be prepared to walk away. The conversation felt more meaningful than any training I'd ever attended. These people were learning not just how to do the work, but how to protect themselves. 2 weeks later, Nolan asked me to discuss expanding our engagement. I expected a standard scope discussion. He had something bigger in mind. The operational improvements we'd made had been so successful, other departments wanted similar help. Procurement, logistics, finance. He asked if I could lead a comprehensive assessment of their entire operation, develop a multi-year improvement plan. It would be the largest engagement my firm had landed all year. I told him I'd discuss it with Lyle. He smiled. "I already called Lyle to make sure you'd have the time and resources." The relationship had evolved from me fixing Victor's problems to becoming their trusted partner for long-term strategic improvements. That felt like real success. The industry conference. March. I was attending a panel and ran into Victor in the hallway afterward. He looked smaller, somehow. Less confident. We made eye contact, and he walked over, a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. He asked how I was doing. I said well. He mentioned some interesting projects, but gave no details. I asked generically about the firm, and he gave a vague answer about transitions and changes. The conversation lasted maybe 2 minutes before someone called his name, and he excused himself. I felt nothing watching him walk away. No satisfaction from seeing him diminished. No sympathy for whatever struggles he was facing. Just relief that I wasn't in that environment anymore, and gratitude that I'd found a better path. I helped Lyle interview candidates for new senior consultant positions. I didn't just look for technical skills, but for character. I paid attention to how people talked about their previous work. Did they use I a lot for team projects? Or did they give credit to colleagues? I asked about difficult feedback. One candidate described publicly correcting a junior analyst in a client meeting proudly. I made a note. Not a good fit. Another described coaching someone privately, celebrating improvement. That was the kind of colleague I wanted. We hired 2 people who demonstrated both excellence and genuine respect. My article was published in the industry journal. It generated more reader responses than most pieces they published. People emailed me directly, sharing their own experiences with credit issues. A senior partner at a major company wrote that she'd dealt with similar problems and wished someone had addressed the topic publicly back then. A junior consultant thanked me for validating his decision to leave a firm where his manager consistently took credit for his work. An HR director asked me to speak to her company. My experience wasn't unique. The consulting industry had a widespread problem, and by writing about it professionally without naming names, I'd opened a conversation that needed to happen. An invitation arrived for a panel discussion on women in consulting at a major industry conference. I accepted. I decided to share my story about the award ceremony, again, without mentioning Victor or my old firm. I focused on the lessons: documenting your work, building direct client relationships, knowing when to leave an environment that doesn't value you. The room was packed. As I spoke, I saw women in the audience nodding along. Afterward, several came up, thanking me for addressing the credit issue directly. One said my advice gave her a concrete action plan for her own similar situation. Another told me she was going to be more vocal about her contributions. These conversations reminded me that speaking up, sharing challenges, helped others find their own paths forward. The next week, an unexpected email arrived from Jennifer, a former colleague from Victor's firm. We met for coffee. She told me that watching how I handled the situation with Victor had inspired her to start looking for a new position. The environment at their firm had gotten worse after I left. People realized leadership didn't care who did the work as long as it looked good. She'd been documenting her own contributions, building relationships with recruiters. I told her about the culture at my firm, how Lyle made sure everyone's work was recognized. 2 weeks later, she had an interview and eventually an offer. Having someone leave Victor's firm specifically because of my example felt strange, but also deeply validating. My decision to leave quietly and build something better had created a path for other people to follow. Then, the client who had been the source of all the problems with Victor sent me an email in May that caught me completely off guard. Nolan forwarded a message from their CEO. They wanted to nominate me for the same Industry Innovation Award that Victor had won. The nomination would recognize the expanded work we'd done together. I read the email twice, then called Nolan to ask him to withdraw the nomination. He seemed surprised. "Are you sure?" he asked. I told him I appreciated the thought, but I'd rather be known for my work than for awards. The whole experience with Victor had taught me that recognition from the right people mattered more than trophies. Nolan understood. He said everyone at his company knew the value I brought, regardless of awards. That conversation mattered more to me than any ceremony ever could. My firm marked my 1-year anniversary with a team dinner at an Italian restaurant downtown. Brooklyn stood up, wine glass raised. "She's elevated everyone's standards for what excellent work looks like," she announced. "She showed us that doing things right doesn't mean sacrificing your values. Integrity and success aren't opposites." The whole table clapped. I felt my face get hot, but my heart swelled with gratitude. These people valued actual work, not just appearances. They recognized contributions. I'd found exactly what I needed. Catherine from my old firm sent an email 2 weeks later. Would I be willing to present a workshop on project documentation and proper attribution practices? They were implementing new training programs based on their investigation. Several junior consultants had asked for guidance on protecting their work and getting recognition. I read it 3 times. Part of me wanted nothing to do with that place. But another part recognized the problem was bigger than me. The next generation deserved better. I replied, saying I'd do it. Catherine scheduled it, offering my standard consulting rate. The workshop took place in a conference room I recognized from client presentations years ago. 20 consultants showed up, mostly junior and mid-level people. Tired but eager. I spoke about creating systems where everyone's contributions stayed visible, about documentation practices that protected individual work, about having difficult conversations with managers, and building your own reputation through direct client relationships. 3 people shared their own stories about credit being taken, almost identical to mine. I gave practical advice. Afterward, 7 people came up individually to thank me. They'd felt alone. They appreciated concrete guidance. Walking out of that building for the last time felt different. I wasn't running away anymore. I was helping fix the problems I'd escaped. The week after the workshop, Lyle called me into his office. He closed the door. "The senior partners have been discussing your trajectory," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "They want to offer you a partnership track position, starting immediately. The timeline would make me one of the youngest partners in company history. My combination of technical skills and business development ability made me too valuable to lose. It came with a significant raise, equity options, and a seat in strategic planning meetings. I told him I needed a day to think about it, even though I already knew my answer. He smiled. That's exactly the kind of careful decision-making we value. I accepted the next morning. The clients I'd brought in represented 15% of the firm's total revenue. My teams consistently delivered results that led to contract extensions and referrals. I'd built exactly the kind of reputation I wanted, based on actual work, not political games. This success felt solid, earned, in a way Victor's stolen award never could have. I knew exactly what I'd accomplished, because I'd done it myself. Every client relationship belonged to me, because I'd earned their trust. Every team member respected me because I'd proven myself reliable and fair. Nobody could take that away by giving a speech or attending the right meetings. The partnership track came with budget authority to hire my first team of junior consultants. I interviewed for 3 weeks, selecting 2 recent graduates who reminded me of myself at that age. Smart, dedicated, maybe a little too willing to let others take credit. I made it clear from day one. Their contributions would be recognized publicly. Their names on client presentations. Specific work mentioned in progress reports. They attended meetings where their analysis would be discussed. During team celebrations, I called out exactly what each person had contributed. I never wanted anyone working for me to feel invisible the way I had felt at that award ceremony. One of them thanked me after her first month. Her previous internship supervisor had presented her research without attribution. I told her that would never happen on my team, and I meant it. Brooklyn got promoted to senior consultant in early fall. She came to my office, beaming. "Working with you taught me that success doesn't require compromising your integrity," she said. "You've changed how I think about what kind of consultant I want to become." We celebrated at that same Italian restaurant, champagne toasting to doing good work with good people. The best outcome of leaving Victor's firm wasn't just my own success. It was creating an environment where other people could succeed without sacrificing their values. 18 months after accepting the partnership position, the invitation arrived. The industry association wanted me to deliver the keynote address at their annual conference. The same event where Victor had accepted his award and given that speech thanking everyone except me. My assistant asked if I wanted her to decline politely. I stared at the message for several minutes, then responded, "I'd accept." Lyle walked into my office an hour later, beaming. He'd heard. "This elevates the entire firm's reputation," he exclaimed. I spent 3 weeks preparing my speech, wanting to talk about building real success, not manufactured reputation. The importance of recognizing the people who actually do the work. Sustainable client relationships through knowledge transfer. The morning of the conference, I stood backstage, watching attendees fill the ballroom. 800 people. Colleagues, clients, consultants I'd mentored. Brooklyn sat in the 3rd row, giving me an encouraging smile. The organizer introduced me. I walked onto the stage, looked out at all those faces. I talked about integrity in consulting, earning recognition, valuing your team. I never mentioned Victor by name, never described the specific situation. It was professional, focused on positive principles. The audience responded with genuine engagement. People nodded. Some took notes. A few looked uncomfortable, like my words hit too close to home for situations they'd experienced or created themselves. When I finished, the applause lasted longer than I expected. People stood up. The ovation continued for almost a minute. I walked off stage, feeling like I'd said something that truly mattered. The rest of the conference was a blur of conversations. A senior consultant knew exactly which situation inspired my speech. She'd worked at my old firm, experienced similar credit issues. A young analyst thanked me for addressing something nobody talks about openly. A client executive rethought how his company evaluated consulting partners. Each conversation reminded me that my experience wasn't unique. The problem existed throughout the industry. Speaking up about it publicly mattered more than I'd realized. I flew home the next day, feeling genuinely satisfied with my career for the first time in years. I loved the projects I was leading. I enjoyed mentoring the talented consultants on my teams. I'd built a firm culture where people's contributions actually mattered. The success felt earned and real. Looking back now, I can see that losing credit for that project became the catalyst for finding a better path. If Victor had acknowledged my work, I probably would have stayed at that firm for years, accepting his pattern, not knowing anything different was possible. His betrayal forced me to leave and discover that other firms operated with actual integrity. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be now, doing work that matters, with people who value both results and how those results are achieved. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about making someone fail. It's about building something so undeniably excellent, so profoundly impactful, that it speaks for itself, loud and clear. Have you ever faced a similar situation where your hard work was stolen or unrecognized? How did you deal with it? What did you learn? I'd really love to hear your stories in the comments below.